Okay, I'm going to go through the trades a little bit more quickly today. I've added a chart that actually tracks the particular trades that I'm going to be pointing out, and it totals everything for me. So I'll be able to show you at the end what the levels are of the entries and exits and how many points total you would have gotten out of those trades if you had taken them. And keep in mind, again, I am taking the most pessimistic entries and exits for the candle that I'm pointing at, meaning that if I'm getting into a long, I'm taking the highest point of that candle. Okay, so first trade is right here. So we see that the actual score starts to move up. And the key here is we're already starting at 931. We're starting to get a fair amount of highs for the upside and a fair amount of lows for the downside, while the lows for the upside are low and the highs for the downside are low. So the entry would be right here at 931. Then I'm going to choose an exit. Right in here, I probably would have held because you can see we go from 18 highs on the upside as we progress through here. Now we're at 20 highs, while at the same time we are going from 17 lows on the downside to 30 new lows on the downside. All the more reason why I would stay in this trade and probably would have held it through that point right there. Up here, we've stopped making highs and lows. I would probably dump it, and I'm going to choose a point that's actually the lowest point in this upper part right here. So your exit would be right here. So the time to enter the trade would have been 9:31. Your entry would have been 88.25. Your exit would be 94, and your total would be 5 3/4 points. Second trade, over here, we jump from -19 for the downside as it's moving up to a -3. Very substantial jump. So your entry would be right here. This is a fade trade. So this is a trade, if you get into this trade, you don't want it to go significantly against you. In this case, it would probably go 1, maybe 1.5 points against you if you got in at the top of this candle. As this progresses, things are going in your favor. It never comes back to your entry. You would hold through this trade. You could potentially hold through here because it's not coming back to your entry. If you did get out, I would say right over here where you're actually getting 3 candles in a row. So it's sideways trading. So your exit would be right here. That one, enter at 10:04. It's a short. Your entry is 90.75. Your exit is 78 for 12 3/4 points. So after that trade, I don't know if I would be getting in another trade because even though we are getting a little bit of an increase right here and a increase in the upside and decrease in the downside, we made a lot of new highs for the downside while we were making this move. So we actually jumped all the way from 4 to 11 as we get into this area right here. So this isn't necessarily a good sign for the upside. So, and it's not a matter of the fact that there's not strength on the upside. It's the fact that right now and in the immediacy, the more recent highs are happening on the downside. So that isn't necessarily a good sign for the upside at this point. So I would hold off on a trade and I would wait for confirmation or wait to see something actually moving in the right direction. So that wouldn't necessarily be a time to take a trade. Over here, we do see a significant weakness in the downside, but again, not necessarily a lot of movement on the upside. So this doesn't, weakness on one side doesn't necessarily equate to strength on the other. So this wouldn't necessarily be a trade for the upside. However, now here's the difference. We do see strength in the downside right here, while the upside is remaining relatively flat. This is another entry potentially for the downside. So we go all the way from a -9. Once we get into positive territory, this is a potential entry. So I'm going to put it right there. And then you would follow this through because, again, we're making new highs for the downside and we're making new lows for the upside. So you can see that we go from 11 highs up to 16 highs now, while the lows for the upside go from 5 to 11 right in here. So again, that's definitely strength. So this is a hold on and go with situation. So we would hold this through here. Again, we start to see things go a little bit sideways, and this would be potentially an exit. I would say exit right in here because you don't want it to go too far against you. I'm going to just choose an exit right in here. So that would be an exit at 66 quarter. So you see we entered at 78, we exited at 68 quarter. That's a 9 3/4 point trade. So the next trade is right in here. So you see we're basically even. We have very similar number of highs for the upside as we do for the downside, while the lows for the upside and lows for the downside are very near each other. So when we see this starting to degrade, the downside is starting to degrade, the upside is starting to move up, this right here would be another entry point. So I would probably choose an entry point right in here at that point. And again, this is a go with. I would wait to see confirmation because you're in a candle and it isn't coming back to your entry and everything is basically even. I would potentially give it the opportunity to take about 3 points of heat. It doesn't come back to that. I would say this is a hold situation to see how it plays out. Even though things are moving a little bit negative for the upside, there's not new highs or new lows, so it's definitely a reasonable hold. Holding in through to here, again, it's kind of sideways trading, so it's not coming back to your entry. So this would be a time to potentially just hold on. Once you get up into here, things start to go just basically candle after candle is sideways. So I'm just going to choose a random one because they're all basically roughly at the same level. I would choose an exit here. That's a long. Your entry is 45.68. Your exit is 73.5 for a 5 1/4 point trade. Okay, next trade is over here where you start to see a decrease in the upside. I would probably say that you would want to see at least a reasonable amount of movement here. Let's say your entry is at here at 1310. So again, it is going a little bit in profit, but it's not coming back to your entry. Okay, in this case, where you see the downside is moving up and then it starts to come back down, I would probably, when this started to increase, I would probably bail over here. So I'm going to just choose an exit. Uh, we'll just say right here. There's three. You can see that there's more than 3 candles right here. We're going to choose that exit, which gives you a 1.25 trade. Given the previous trade was only a 1.25, I would probably hold off and wait for things to settle a little bit. This right here does look like it's moving, but it's very gradual. And given the fact that we're doing a lot of sideways trading, and you can see all of these candles are sideways trading, not a lot of movement, I would probably hold off and wait for it to actually give a little bit more volatility. You do see the downside moving up. So this might right here might be a reasonable entry. It is gradual, so I guess it's a matter of preference. You do see it cross over and then cross back. Again, lots of sideways trading, but you can see where it crosses over and actually gets, so the high over here is 30, and then you can see this one gets to 35. This would potentially be another entry for a short. So I would enter here. I would hold this through. It's never coming back to your entry. So I would hold this through this, even though it is coming back close. You may take, let's say, a point of heat, but then we start to see it actually progress even further over here. You could potentially be exiting here where it does a little bit of sideways trading, or if you decided to hold, you could hold it all the way down into here. I'll just put it somewhere in here. We'll just choose one of these to exit. So there's the exit. So your entry would be 69.5, your exit would be 58 3/4, and that would be a 10 3/4 point trade. So this doesn't necessarily cover all the trades throughout the day, but it gives you an idea of my thinking in how I would use Marketscore to determine where I would get in and where I would get out, and the information I would be using to decide how to get in and whether I should stay in or whether or not I should get out of a trade. The total for the day is 45.5 points, which is quite a bit, but today was probably the most movement we've had for a couple days. So just to give you an idea of the different trades that would potentially be for the day. Okay, so here are the same trades for the NASDAQ, same entry times as the other chart. Levels are roughly the same. The total for this in NASDAQ would be 188 1/4 points.